Hi guys, so today I'm going to teach you something a little bit about color grading since it's a bad day and I couldn't really go out and shoot stuff. And so what I'm going to teach you today is just the basics, and then from there on it's a lot of trial and error. You can learn on your own, experience it, just play with it around. You don't really need to be specific, just the way you see things and the way you think looks good. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into Premiere. Okay, so now that we are in Premiere, I already imported the videos that I'm going to use as an example. So the first thing you want to do is you go here under Lumetri Scopes. Now I'm using Adobe CC 2018, so if you don't have your panel here, then you can find it under Window, and then you go to Lumetri Scope. So the first time you look at it, it could be a little bit intimidating and a bit confusing. So what we're trying to do today is to understand a little bit more about it. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is the waveform monitor. So what this is essentially showing me how my exposure is spread across the entire video. Now, if we play a little bit, you can see it starts moving as well as my RGB panel. And so what we essentially want is we want to have values spread across 0 to 100 across our entire video. This meaning that our footage is not underexposed or overexposed. So 0 means pure black and 100 means pure white. And so what we could do about it is we could go under Lumetri color, and then we go to RGB curve, and then we're going to go under white because this is where we're going to fix our brightness. And so what most of the times you would look to achieve is a slightly S-curved. So this means that you're going to try to crush your shadows and up your highlights. Here we have our highlights, we have our midtones, and then we have our shadows. So if we crush your shadows a little bit, you can see that the exposure is starting to shift a little bit, and then we're gonna up the highlights a little bit. See how I'm starting to have my exposure spread across the entire video. And we don't want it to do it too much because then our shadows will be completely black, and this is something that we don't want. So maybe just not too much, just a little bit here, just like that. And if you look at it, it starts to look just a little bit better. And what else we could do is we go under basic correction, and we can bump up the contrast a little bit, and maybe my exposure as well. So I'm already starting to like it, maybe just a little bit with the shadows. And as you can see, I'm already starting to have values from 0 to 100. So this meaning that the exposure should look good overall. Now, if we look at a before and after, we can see it looks a little bit better. And so that's what I would do. I would leave it like this. Maybe tweak a little bit more around colors, and if you, depending on what you want to achieve, but for me, I like it and I would leave it like this. Now, so what you should do is you should start color correcting first and then color grading, because it helps with your workflow. It would be much easier, and the first thing you want is you want to have your exposure right, and then you can start tweaking the colors, grading it, trying to achieve a different feel to it. Okay, so for the second example here, I'm going to show you. So if we look here, we're going to look at the RGB panel and at the vector scope. So the RGB panel is pretty similar to the waveform monitor. It's similar. It also starts from the left of the panel to the left of the footage. It goes the same for the RGB panel. Left for red, from left to right, green and blue. And now the vector scope, as you can see, looks pretty much similar to a color wheel. We've got all the colors: reds, yellows, greens, cyans, and so on. And so what I can show you is if you go under effects and fast color correction. So I'm just going to move this here so you can see both at the same time. I'm going to put it here. And so as you can see, it looks similar to the color wheel. And now if we're going to start dragging it to different sides, you can see how the RGB panel and the vector scope are also starting to shift as I'm shifting the color wheel here. Now, if I look closely on to the vector scope here, you can see you've got blues, you've got your sky, you've got greens, your grass, and a little bit of yellow. But I've also got a little bit of red and magenta, which I don't want in the picture. And so how I could get rid of that would be, I would go to the opacity here and select my pen tool. And so what essentially you would want to select your white, but since I don't have any white footage here except my sky, then I'm going to try to select something that has the magenta into it. I would usually select the sky, but because it has a blue tint to it, I would not be able to correct it. Now, I'm just going to try to select a bit of grass that has the magenta into it, and I'm just going to create a mask. And so you can see here that I've got my reds higher than the greens and the blues. And how you're going to fix this is you go to your color wheel and then you're going to pull it towards the opposite color. So I've got magenta and the opposite color is green. And so I'm going to lower my reds a little bit, just pulling it towards green. As you can see, as I'm pulling it this way, you can see how my reds are starting to crush and my greens are starting to lift. And so now if we look at it, I'm going to delete the mask that we just made. And as you can see, it's already starting to look a bit better. You've got like this, before and after. And now if you look at your Lumetri, if you look at your vector scope and your RGB parade, you can see that it also swifted a little bit, not too much, just a little bit, so that we got rid of the magenta color, the magenta tint. And so what you could do from now on, you just start to fix it and correct it the way you want to. So just go maybe under curves and just play around with it. Sorry, not like that. Grab a little bit of your darks and a little bit of your highlights and play around with it just how you want to look, how you want it to look. And then maybe your contrast higher, maybe your shadows a little bit the opposite way. You just, however you want it to look like. It really depends on what you're looking for. It depends on what you really like and what you're trying to achieve. And so I think this is it. I don't really know if there's anything else that I could possibly try to explain. There are a bit, of course, there are more things related to color correcting, but these are the few basic steps that you can learn in order to be able to start learning on your own, to say so. And it's a lot of trial and error, so just start having fun with it. It's also a lot of work, but as long as you like it. So yeah, I think this was it. I don't really know if there's anything related to this that I can really show you. I hope you like it, and if you do, see you guys in the next video.